seem like a long time ago.
Certainly does, yeah. Well, actually, this last week, it just feels like yesterday, good and bad.
Yes, yeah.
Good morning, Prime Minister Kak Masrour. Good morning, Sir John.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good
Morning,
afternoon,
Prime Minister.
Erbil.
Good morning. Good morning to all of you.
Good morning, Prime Minister. It's a long, long time since we met.
Yes, Captain, I remember you very well. I hope you're doing well.
Still working at it.
Captain Hardie, you're lucky. I remember the Prime Minister's father.
Yeah,
Well,
it's not up to me. He has to join in from the link I have sent. I will send another one to Robert Halfon, roberthalfon.com. You gave me that one. You gave me that one. Okay, so can he join from Halfon for Harlow at roberthalfon.com? Quickly, because that's an email. Okay, Halfon for Harlow.
You watching any cricket latest today, Sir John? Start of the county championship today. I'm a big Yorkshire fan.
Jason, I so wish I were, but I'm afraid not. I'm hoping to get to the Oval as soon as possible, but sadly not today. Today's a bit crowded.
Yeah, Joe Root's playing for Yorkshire in the first couple of games of the season. So,
Well, he is a magnificent batsman. He's a class apart, I think, in terms of Test cricket from anyone else we have. I remember seeing him when he first burst on the county scene a long time ago.
no,
You're
he's
obviously
amazing.
a keen cricket fan, Jason.
Yeah, no, useful bowler as well in one dayers
Oh, yes, indeed, he is.
and the
He
Test
is.
match in India. Yeah.
I don't understand why he doesn't play permanently in the one-day team, but then I'm not a selector.
Being a Scot, it's a sort of black magic to me, cricket. It's but my son, who is very, very, Oxford, he's absolutely fanatical about cricket. Gets to the Oval as much as he can.
Well, you clearly brought him up very well, Tom. I mean, talking of Yorkshire, my cricket memories go back to Hutton. I remember seeing Len Hutton bat at the Oval in the early 1950s.
Oh gosh,
Really?
amazing! I'd have loved to have seen that.
Oh, me too. I'm glad that I did. Hutton and Compton, it was a wonderful memory.
Yeah.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Good morning.
Rob.
Yes, Robert, we can. Good morning.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Oh, good morning. Thank you. I think there were a few teething problems. Good morning, distinguished visitors as well. And Sir John and Prime Minister.
Good morning, Robert.
Good morning.
Good afternoon from Erbil.
Thank you. Good
Well, you're right. Actually, it's afternoon here, but it's morning in the UK, so we can always wish them a good morning then.
Yes.
Okay, Barbroin, shall we go?
Right.
I'm ready when you are, Gary.
Yes, please. I think you can start now.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining this historic rally to mark the 30th anniversary of Sir John Major's safe haven in Iraqi Kurdistan. The rally is organised by the APPG on the Kurdistan region in Iraq in association with the Kurdistan Regional Government High Representation in the United Kingdom. It's being recorded and streamed live on Kurdistan 24, Facebook at the KRG UK page, and on YouTube. Great thanks are owed to Sir John. He took the issue to the British Cabinet on March the 21st, 1991, Kurdish New Year as it happens, and within weeks persuaded the European Union and the United States to implement his notion of a safe haven and a no-fly zone for the Iraqi Kurds. They lasted until the liberation of Iraq in 2003. Millions of refugees, some of whom had been in neighboring countries since the 1970s and 1980s, returned to their homes in the largest refugee return since 1945. In 1992, they held elections to a parliament and formed their first coalition government on July the 4th. Despite a bitter civil war between 1994 and 1998, they laid the foundations of the modern Kurdistan region. Sir John's actions defied foreign policy orthodoxies, which respected sovereign powers and certainly saved thousands or perhaps hundreds of thousands of Kurds. Without such focused military intervention, the Kurdistan region would probably not exist today. It was also the courageous Kurdistani uprising, the effective lobbying of Kurds, such as Foreign Minister Safeen Dizayee, our Vaccine Minister Nadhim Zahawi, and many more, the horror and then generosity of the British public, our service personnel, and our allies, France and America. They all saved Kurdistan, a firm ally in the continuing fight for religious pluralism, an open society, and reform in the Middle East. It proved that Kurdistan has more friends than the mountains, and I hope this rally will further increase good relations between our countries. First, Sir John, and then the Kurdistan Region Prime Minister, Masrour Barzani. Sir John.
Well, Robert, thank you very much, and thank you for those very kind and generous words, which are much appreciated. I'd like to respond, if I may, immediately by congratulating you and the All-Party Group for all you've done to promote the interests of the Kurdistan region. I've no doubt you'll continue to keep their interests in the forefront of British foreign policy, and I think that is absolutely the right thing to do. I am also delighted that this webinar is marking the 30th anniversary of safe havens and no-fly zones, and very honoured to be invited to contribute to it. I naturally remember that time with great clarity. The concept of safe havens was devised in London, supported by the European Union, accepted by the United States, and endorsed in the United Nations. And the Security Council Resolution 688 established no-fly zones specifically to protect the Kurdish nation from airborne attacks by the regime of Saddam Hussein. It was for the Kurds a truly frightening and terrible time, and one that they faced with great bravery and great resilience. But today, if I may, Robert, I'd like to look to the future. I have, of course, long retired from politics. I speak now as a private citizen, but a private citizen with a continuing affection for the Kurdish nation. I watch with admiration the bravery of the Peshmerga who suffered so many casualties in their fight against extremism. Their role has been critical, as indeed has the heartwarming generosity of so many Kurds and their families in offering homes and their support to over 1 million of their fellow citizens fleeing from war and from conflict. I know how much the British government values their relationship with the Kurdish regional government, and they do so for good reason. Our two countries share an opposition to extremism. They share also a common commitment to democracy and liberal values, without which no citizen can ever be truly free in their lives. And such shared values make for long and lasting friendships. As I look ahead, I know that the Kurdistan region of Iraq can continue to rely on the support and goodwill of the United Kingdom. We've been proud in the past to offer technical and military support to the Peshmerga, including training, air support, and gifts of necessary equipment. But our commitment to the Kurdish nation goes beyond the military. It's focused on helping to improve the lives of Kurdish families. Many have suffered in ways perhaps that the outsider can barely imagine, and suffered for a long time. To ease their hardship, the United Kingdom has provided humanitarian aid including food, including healthcare, including funding to help restore vital services and improve the well-being of millions of people. So what is the British purpose in all that? I think it is very clear. It was in past governments and it is in the present government. It's an ambition to see a thriving Kurdistan region, one that can live in peace within an increasingly prosperous Iraq. We wish to help Kurds build a future that offers the security, the jobs, and the opportunities to create an economy that will transform the lives of this and future generations of young Kurds. This ambition, this joint ambition with the government of the Kurdish region, will continue to require close and friendly relations. It'll require security cooperation, ever-increasing business links, and support for economic reform. But we can't achieve our ambitions alone. It will be a joint effort. It will require a partnership, not only with the Kurds in Iraq, but also with the United Nations and other willing international partners. Progress will need partnership, willingness to reform, a preparedness to put future well-being at the very center of policy, and of course a budget that is sustainable over the long term. I was delighted to know that the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office Minister James Cleverly visited Erbil a few weeks ago. I'm sure that James and his colleagues in ministerial office at the Foreign Office will maintain a keen interest in events and be continuing advocates for close relationships between Britain and the Kurdistan region. I'd like, if I may, to mention a more personal matter. I learned only 2 days ago that a street in Erbil is to be named after me to commemorate the 30th anniversary of the activities of 30 years ago and the promotion of no-fly zones. I'd like to say to my friends in Kurdistan that I'm truly flattered by this generous gesture and would like to thank everyone who played any part in bringing it about. I shall hope one day to be able to see that road in person. During my last visit to Erbil, I just missed that magnificent Kurdish spring, the celebration of Nowruz, and I was very sorry to have missed it. It is a time when your beautiful country is bathed in a carpet of spring flowers. It's a time also that tends to herald a new dawn. Kurdistan has celebrated 30 such dawns since those dreadful days under the regime of Saddam Hussein. Despite the heartbreaking sacrifices of the past, I believe Kurds should be enormously proud of what they collectively have managed to achieve since those difficult times. So I look forward with optimism to the many can be absolutely sure no one will be cheering louder at your success and your future happiness than your friends here in the United Kingdom. And with that, I wish you all a very enjoyable and stimulating webinar, and will hand over to the chairman of the All-Party Group, Robert Halfon. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Sir John. And I think that one of the first places when we do visit Kurdistan again will be the Sir John Major Street. So I hope very much that we get to do that. I'm going to pass on now to His Excellency, the Prime Minister of Kurdistan. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chairman Robert. Thank you, everyone, for participating. So, John, thank you very much for being here, all distinguished guests. It's an honor for me to participate today, marking the 30th anniversary of the Safe Haven and No-Fly Zone. I understand how important that was to support the Kurdish nation, much in need at that time. This was a personal experience for me. I entered the mountains of Kurdistan when the uprising was on the way. For a few days, we celebrated the liberation of Kurdistan from tyranny and from all those decades of oppression. And then when the Republican Army of Iraq, the Republican Guards, were unleashed, they came back and crushed the Kurdish opposition as they did also in the south. People in millions sought refuge in the mountains and to the neighboring countries. And that's when the global community came together to support a compelling humanitarian intervention. I'd like to thank you, Sir John, for the role you played back then. I want to also recognize how important it was in rallying our partners, US, France, UK, and others, to support this common cause. Of course, Operation Provide Comfort was the largest humanitarian mission in modern times, when all the basic needs were brought to the people, millions of people actually, that were stranded in the mountains and in difficult terrains. The intervention set us on a course to shape our destiny and manage our affairs ever since. It's also laid the foundation for lasting partnership with the US, France, UK, and others. The Iraqi opposition, after the Safe Haven was created, came back here and they were operating here until in 2003 they participated partially in overthrowing the regime of Saddam at the time. We have remained true to our values, to the shared values with you. We've transformed from a persecuted minority in Iraq to an advocate for others fleeing violence and persecution from Iraq and Syria. Kurds, Arabs, Muslims, Christians, Yazidis. They now all see Kurdistan as a second home. They see Kurdistan as a safe haven for themselves to be protected. And this was reaffirmed with the last month visit of His Holiness, Pope Francis, when he came to Kurdistan. We know that we have a long road ahead of us. We've been trying everything we can to build a thriving society for Kurdistan, for Kurdistani people, and for all those who see Kurdistan as a safe haven for themselves, even until today. Our journey has not ended. There is a lot we need to do together. We still need your support. We still need the support of the international community. We still need the support of UK, US, France, and all those who helped us to build this Kurdistan region that is a symbol of freedom and success of the biggest humanitarian intervention in history. I would like to mention that during these times we had some better times. But lastly, in 2014, the fight against ISIS, I think, was a turning point of Kurdistan, showing how important it was that what you did back in 1991, Kurdistan's Peshmergas and Kurdish people were the ones that broke the myth of ISIS, a terrorist organization that was threatening the freedom of people and the security of the world. It was the Peshmerga's blood with the support of the coalition forces that defeated ISIS, defeated the caliphate of ISIS. But we have to also remember that terrorism is still out there. these terrorist organizations are still out there trying to reorganize themselves. And in order to contain the threat of terrorism, we still are in much need of cooperation with each other. Since then, Kurdistan has hosted hundreds of thousands of refugees and displaced people from different parts of Iraq and also from Syria. At one point, we were hosting about 2 million people. Now there is about 1 million IDPs and refugees that are still living in camps. The KRG alone is bearing the responsibility of providing the basic services to those with the cost of hundreds of thousands, hundreds of millions of dollars, in fact, annually, to help these people that are living in camps. We are supporting their voluntary return to go back to their homes. But in order to do that, we have to provide a safe environment for their safe return to go back to their homes in other parts of Iraq, or for the refugees to return to their country. We cannot do this without the support of the international community. We are working closely with Baghdad and with Prime Minister Kadhimi to provide such an environment for them. The latest effort was the agreement that we had and signed with them on Shingal. Unfortunately, that agreement is not being fully implemented. So we are hoping that the Iraqi government comes forward and will provide such a safe environment for the return of all of these IDPs to go back to where they belong. Of course, regarding the relationship with the UK, we look at this relationship as strategic and also historic. I'm committed to increasing our bilateral trade and investment with the UK businesses. We are committed to promoting our political and security relationship with the United Kingdom and with all the allies that have helped us throughout this years. We count on you, gentlemen, all of you that are here. I understand that all of you are friends of Kurdistan. I would like to call all of you today in many ways as advocates for Kurdistan, that we want to rely on you to champion our cause in the British Parliament, with the government, with the British businesses, and with the British people. I thank you, and I'll let the chairman take over from here.
Thank you, Prime Minister, and thank you again, Sir John. We're going to move to the second part of our proceedings now and bring in some of the other panelists. I'd like to start off, please, with Nadhim Zahawi.
Thank you very much, Robert Halfon, and Prime Minister Barzani, Sir John Major. It is a privilege to be with you today, and I wouldn't have missed it for the world. In 1991, I was a young man, a young British Kurd who had campaigned and had marched up and down the streets of London against the tyranny and the genocide being committed by the Saddam Hussein regime, of course, earlier in 1988 in Halabja, and the Anfal campaign that took away 183,000 innocent lives, not least amongst the Barzani family, of course. I will never forget those scenes in the mountains after Saddam's army had been pushed back from Kuwait, and of course the Kurdish people had risen up for their rights, but were being attacked by that tyrannical dictator. And I will never forget Sir John Major's role in this, not least because he was able to convince his cabinet and of course his ally, George Bush Sr., that something needed to be done, something much more than just the humanitarian response, which he had already responded to so admirably, pumping tens of millions of pounds and asking other nations to do the same, including, of course, France and others, but needed to go even further than that. And the no-fly zone policy, not an easy policy to implement or to get through the United Nations, but his determination, working with allies like the United States, like France, meant it became a reality. And I think not only did it protect the Kurds for 12 years, but I think in the first 9 years, something like 280,000 sorties were flown to protect the Kurdish people. My colleague Jason McCartney, who's on this webinar, was one of those in the RAF who actually did the protection on the front line. And it's a privilege to have so many MPs here today on this webinar. Prime Minister Barzani, I know the Kurdish people have, since those early days, have continued to rely upon themselves to build that democracy, that tolerant society that welcomes people of all religions and none to the land of the Kurds. And you have followed in your father's footsteps, who I recall when we landed in 1992, welcomed us in a snowy mountains of Kurdistan with many people who are on this webinar, so that we could see for ourselves how the safe haven was working, but also how that money was being administered through the United Nations and other organizations to help the Kurdish people. And of course, since then, the Kurdish people have been enduring further hardship and challenges, not least with the murderous ISIS attacking the Kurds, and actually the Kurds being the front line, not just for Iraq and protecting their own lands, but also for the rest of us, the rest of the world as well. And I know now you are also enduring the challenges of the COVID pandemic, and I am really pleased as the COVID vaccination minister in the United Kingdom that the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine has arrived in Kurdistan and in Iraq, and that you are beginning to vaccinate and protect the most vulnerable against COVID. And I absolutely stand with you in that challenge. I'm sure you will come out of the other side and protect your people, as we are doing in the United Kingdom. But we're here today to celebrate Sir John Major and his extraordinary decision to protect a nation. I think we all on this call who are members of Parliament go into politics because we want to make a difference, but very few of us come out of politics being able to claim that a policy that we championed, that we implemented, actually protected a nation, protected a people. And Sir John can make that claim proudly, which is why, as I say, I wouldn't have missed this webinar for the world to be able to celebrate his name on a major street in Erbil for future generations, for future Kurds, to be able to remember his contribution and the United Kingdom's contribution and friendship to Kurdistan. And of course, sometimes they will ask the question, when we are all long gone, who is John Major? And I hope their parents and grandparents will be able to tell them what John Major did for the Kurdish people. I congratulate you, sir. I salute you. And I'm absolutely in awe of everything you have done for my people, the Kurdish people. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Nadhim. And I was very proud to travel with you, first of all, to Kurdistan a few years ago together with you. And I think your feelings are heartfelt amongst all of us. I'm going to pass over now to Gary Kent, who is Secretary of the All-Parliamentary Party on Kurdistan, and is going to give us a little bit of the history.
Thanks very much, Rob. I wanted to start with Seamus Heaney, the great Irish poet, who wrote, "History says, don't hope on this side of the grave, but then once in a lifetime, the longed for tidal wave of justice rises up and make hope and history rhyme." That opportunity for Kurdistan came in 1991. Discrimination and genocide appeared eternal until Saddam stupidly invaded Kuwait. The frantic weeks between his defeat and Sir John Major's safe haven saved the Kurds and decency in foreign policy. The other key heroes are, first and foremost, the Kurdistani people and their brave rebellion. Astute leaders such as Nadhim Zahawi, who we've just heard, and Safeen Dizayee, who will speak later. Horrified public opinion, those who sent aid, MPs of all parties, and I'd like to give a special mention to Labour's Anne Clwyd, who spent 5 days in the mountains and was a powerful witness. And service personnel, Jason and Tom are here. I've taken quite a few MPs to Kurdistan over the last 15 years, and one of them, the Deputy Speaker of the UK Parliament, Rosie Winterton, is at this rally too, and I'm very pleased to see her and others here. But the thing is, back in '91, Saddam cynically counted on mere warm words and wishes from the wider world. At that time, I looked it up, number one in the charts was "Should I Stay or Should I Go" by The Clash. It was also a political dilemma. The normal position would be to say this is an internal Iraqi matter. It would have proved that the Kurds have no friends but the mountains, and that the UK, in the words of Palmerston, only has eternal interests rather than allies. I'm very pleased to say that Sir John Major rejected that realpolitik, and his moral pragmatism saved the Kurds, who built a safe haven for religious groups, refugees and displaced people, as we've heard. The safe haven gave Kurdistan the freedom to build freedom, to paraphrase another Irish figure, Michael Collins. Kurdistan used freedom to build a parliament and expand universities. After the liberation of Iraq, it built a modern energy sector and boosted living standards. But life doesn't stand still. Our bilateral relationship can help build, for instance, better universities whose research and innovation can encourage enterprise, create jobs, and diversify the economy after COVID and as carbons fade. I also hope that Kurdistan can build a film sector so we can hear the stories, their stories, of the past, the present, and the future. We're not today merely marking history, but seeking to make it. But bravo to Sir John and all those who saved Kurdistan. We have much more to do, but as they say in Kurdistan, Barbroin, let's get on with it. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary. I'm going to pass over to my friend, Jason McCartney, who, as Nadhim Zahawi, flew in the RAF at the time. So, Jason.
Rob, good morning. Sir John, Prime Minister of the KRG, and can I also give a warm welcome as well to Nadhim Zahawi, who's our vaccines minister. A particularly busy time for him this week, so for him to give up some of his incredibly busy time just shows the importance of this webinar. Minister, thank you for joining us, and honoured guests as well. Look, back in 1995, I was a young Royal Air Force officer. I actually wasn't a pilot myself, but I was based in headquarters in Inchylik on Operation Warden, which was one of the follow-ups from Operation Provide Comfort. So I was there in headquarters where we actually operated the no-fly zone from there. But I was very fortunate to actually fly into Iraq via Diyarbakir. And in a Hawk helicopter from Diyarbakir, landing in Zako, which was the military coordination center, where we actually went out on patrols into the Kurdish region villages. And I was just really heartened as well at the appreciation, the reception that we got, and also as well as providing safety and air cover for the people on the ground, we were actually providing medical supplies, we were providing electricity generators, and just giving real reassurance to the people there. Nowadays, we take modern communications for granted. Of course, not everybody in the villages in the KRG region will have realised that the aircraft flying overhead at that time were in fact coalition aircraft and friendly, and therefore they didn't need to run for cover. So it was a big role of reassurance that we were playing, operating out of Zako, the MCC. I came into contact with the wonderful Peshmerga, who provided our security detail. And that's why when 18 years later, a long time later, as a member of parliament, and I was then the chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group, Rob has now taken on that mantle, I was delighted to return to the KRG, where we went to Erbil, and we went back to some of the areas that I had served in 18 years earlier. And yet again, I was heartened by the warm and welcoming reception that we got. But something that really struck me was when we visited Domi's refugee camp near to the border with Syria, was the humanitarian support that the KRG was giving to refugees from Syria. So those that had received the support 18 years earlier, in 1991, at the start of Sir John's support, were now giving support to others who had found themselves in a very, very similar situation. They had passed forward that goodwill, that humanitarian effort, that willingness to help those fleeing from violence and death and persecution. And that's really struck by me. And I think that's why all of us here on this webinar today not only have a great sense of gratitude for what Sir John Major started, but also to everyone in the KRG for the way in which they have now passed that on to others, and they are standing there in support for those fleeing from the evil of Daesh, ISIS, whatever we're going to call them, and standing up tall. So I would just finally end by echoing Sir John Major's words, really. You know, we are all here to support freedom, support peace, and also support a thriving economy. I was really struck by the economic ambition of the KRG, everyone I met in Erbil, and certainly when I go to my local university here at Huddersfield, I always sort of don't tell everyone at the university there. I always seek out the Kurdish students and ask them what they're studying. They're studying to be, you know, and female engineers as well. They're studying to be engineers. They're studying to be doctors. They're studying to be scientists. And they don't want to stay here in the UK. They want to go back to the Kurdistan region. They want to help the economy flourish. I'm proud of what we've achieved. Sir John, thank you very much. Prime Minister, thank you as well. I'm going to continue being part of the All-Party Parliamentary Group. The work has begun, but there's a lot more work to do through these challenging times, and I want to be a part of it with Rob and all our parliamentary colleagues, and it's been a great honour joining you all here on this call this morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jason. It gives me great pleasure to now introduce Captain Tom Hardie-Forsyth, not only an advisor to the KRG, but also to speak on his experience in the British Army in the Safe Haven. Captain.
First of all, I want to thank Sir John for doing something that I thought was impossible at that time, as providing me as a soldier with a new moral compass, which I have never lost, with his quiet and insistent integrity. Thank you very much. As a British Army captain arriving in the spring of 1991 in the mountains of Kurdistan, I was greeted with almost unimaginable suffering. The mud, stink, children dying of dysentery, adults almost beyond despair. We'd arrived to put a stop to the inhuman manhunt of innocent civilians following this uprising of, it's not too strong a word, of traumatized peoples against Saddam Hussein's regime. Having initially called for regime change, not only did the Allies not initially support it, but we foolishly gave Saddam the means to continue it by allowing his helicopter gunships to continue to fly, in inverted commas, for internal security purposes, actually just handing him another license to kill civilians en masse. Furthermore, when I actually went to the mountains, I sort of expected the sort of destruction on a scale that a short, sharp conflict creates. But that isn't what I witnessed. What I saw was much worse. What I kept hearing everywhere from ordinary people in the mountains, terrified out of their lives to return back, was Anfal, Anfal, Anfal. The name, as we all know, of the genocide campaign against the Kurdish people. As I traveled around, I saw village after village that couldn't have been destroyed in just 5 minutes or even just a year. And when I say destroyed, I mean meticulously and with heartless industrial efficiency, which all had to be rebuilt again by the KRG. So despite the suffering that people were enduring in the mountains, there was a completely understandable reluctance to come back down. Actually, not just reluctance, absolute terror. And I have to be honest with this, because up till then, they were used to casual betrayal by the West over many years. We can't hide from that. These people had a shrewd historic insight. If they went into organized camps and were disarmed in the usual way, they could again be sitting ducks for Saddam, no matter what we promised them, because that had been their experience up until then. And shockingly, and again, Sir John was very important here, they were almost right again, because just as they were coming down off the mountains at the end of spring in May, having given our promises of protection, I was at a staff meeting at military headquarters in Zakho. We were briefed by our American commander-in-chief of the Operation Provide Comfort that all Allied military forces were to be replaced by a laughable United Nations Guard contingent of Iraq. Fortunately, for once, this was too much for some officials and the British public to swallow, and for Sir John. That wasn't going to happen. It wasn't going to be business again. And as a result of all of this, of course, the Allies agreed to mount Operation Poised Hammer, providing fast reaction forces if Saddam did renege and try to continue his dreadful plans. That's something a lot of people don't know about Sir John, that he made sure that that wouldn't be repeated again. Well, 30 years have now passed, and a great deal has happened. Some good, some not so good, and frankly, some downright evil, like ISIS. But the one thing that has moved me powerfully has been that when it came to the necessity to rescue, house, and protect tens of thousands of other refugees from other places, from ISIS and other dreadful forces, the Kurdish people, maybe as a result of their experience, but just as a result of their normal generosity, never hesitated or stinted in their response to help these people. A tremendous cost and sacrifice, not just in money, but in the people themselves. For this and other reasons, I'm determined personally to keep my own promise that I made in the mountains 30 years ago to the Kurdish people, never to abandon them. I think I, like a lot of the people around here in this webinar, still have unfinished business.
Thank you. Thank you, Captain Tom Hardie-Forsyth, for that. It gives me great pleasure now to introduce Safeen Dizayee, the KRG Foreign Minister, but also who was an activist at the time in the United Kingdom, a Kurdish activist. Welcome, Foreign Minister.
And thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. First, I would like to thank APPG and KRG Representation in UK for arranging this webinar, thanking His Excellency Prime Minister Masrour Barzani for accepting this invitation, and also, of course, John Major for being here, and all of the colleagues. When the idea of naming a street after Sir John Major was put to His Excellency the Prime Minister, immediately instructed the relevant authorities to find suitable, a place that would be quite visible and in the heart of the city. And a few days ago, I had the pleasure with James Thornton, the UK Consul-General in Erbil, to unveil the streets and the name of the street with a few other colleagues and the governor of Erbil and the minister of municipality. I think the Prime Minister has very eloquently spoke about the past, the present, and the hope for future. And indeed, Sir John Major touched upon that too. Hope for future. I would like to share very briefly my own experience at the time when Minister Zahawi mentioned for people like us who were living in exile in UK. Of course, at that time, the Kurdish issue was very much confined to very few news items, particularly during Halabja in 1988. But when the exodus occurred, and that as a result of the uprising, popular uprising of 1991, after the Iraqi army was evicted from Kuwait, the army, of course, was not strong enough to confront the might of 36 nations. However, it was strong enough to fight its own people in the most terrible and committing heinous crimes of suppressing the Shiite uprising in the south and then turning to the Kurds in the north. Now, of course, the Kurds, remember in Halabja, they did not want to wait until the army arrives on their doorsteps because they very well remembered Halabja and Fal. This is why they fled to the mountains. And because of the policy of destruction that had occurred earlier years, there were no settlements between the cities and the mountains. So the more the people fled, they had no place to take refuge. That's why they were stranded on the mountains along the border with Turkey and Iran. And of course, the moving pictures passed on to international TV stations at that time by various journalists, which is highly appreciated. I think that was one of the main ways that to make the international community aware and the leaders to move. Now, of course, what happened in UK, from my personal experience, what we could do then was picket outside Downing Street, at the US Embassy in Grosvenor Square. People like Minister Zahawi and many others, including former Iraqi Foreign Minister Hoshyar Zebari, the current Iraqi President Barham Saleh, and many others. So we were trying to promote, we were trying to get people awareness of this. And I think the pictures were moving enough for people to see it on their screens. And I remember old age pensions were actually donating their savings to some of the charitable organizations who were collecting food items and other needs for the refugees. And I remember very well when a couple of dozen Kurdish activists stormed the Iraqi embassy in London, and they took over the embassy. Of course, their intention was not sinister, but they were trying to attract attention. And after a couple of hours with the arrangements with the London police, they surrendered and they were taken to the court. And it was very moving because the presiding judge had seen these dreadful images on the TV screens of these people dying in thousands per day. And with tears in his eyes, he dismissed the case, but he warned the demonstrators not to do this again. So what I'm trying to say, the public at large, they were very much moved. And of course, this was very much, I would say, crowned by the initiative taken by Sir John and later by Security Council Resolution 688. Luckily, we were able to have this safe haven, which was later expanded from Zaho to Ahmediyya and then covering all of Kurdistan. One thing which I recall again was one of the filmmakers from UK, Gwyn Roberts, who had produced a documentary film called Dream Betrayed. He was in Kurdistan during the jubilant days of the uprising, and then he also witnessed the exodus. So immediately he came back to UK. I think he was the first one to bring back those images, and he immediately called myself and a few other colleagues to help him to translate the footages. There were tens of hours of filming, so we helped him, and we were at one time we were watching the jubilant days of people, including many people I knew. My immediate family also were in the picture. On the other, next door, there was the screen having the images of the stranded people. And we didn't know what was going on and whether our own family members are amongst those fleeing. So it was quite a moving image, but nevertheless, these images moved international conscience. And I think what we have been able to build 30 years on, despite the shortcomings, despite the loopholes, despite the certain problems that we endure, but I think we have not let our friends down. But I must say the story doesn't end here. We should be looking forward to the future. And the fact that we have been able to build a country with a free democratic election and not being an independent entity, yet we have been able to be an important player in the regional politics and to a degree on international politics. So we would like to keep it that way, and we want to even develop it further. That can only happen with the support of our friends that have come to our help in the past. Sir John Major, United States, France, Germany, European friends, neighboring countries, who also opened their doors to our refugees. Lastly, I would like to express our appreciation for what has been done, and we're looking forward to our future cooperation and to try to mend some of the issues that are pending, and with the reforms that the government has and with the issues that we are facing, we still have expectations from our friends. As it's always been said, the mountains are not only our friends, we also have good friends like you. Thank you.
Thank you. And what a wonderful tale of political activism. It's wonderful to hear that story. I'm going to pass on to our esteemed UK Consul General in Kurdistan, who I've met on a number of occasions, and it's a real great pleasure to have you here, James Thornton, who's going to talk about bilateral relations.
Robert, thank you very much. Thank you to the APPG. Thank you to the Kurdistan High Representation for organizing this event. Thank you to Sir John and to His Excellency, the Prime Minister, Masrour Barzani, for your presence. The first thing I'd like to talk about is the UK response in 1991. We've touched on various aspects of this. The first thing I think was the importance of a number of UK journalists getting out into the mountains to tell and to film the story of the Kurds and their suffering because of what Saddam was trying to do. And we have to thank them for getting the images on our TV screens. There was also quite clearly a big outpouring of support and concern amongst the British public as a whole for the plight that they were seeing on their screens. There was major donations of humanitarian assistance through UK-based charities by ordinary people. And indeed, a friend of mine hired a van, persuaded his friends to buy food and blankets and so on to put in the van, and drove it himself all the way across Europe, all the way across Turkey to hand over to those in the camps as his own personal contribution. And I don't think that was, I know that wasn't an isolated case. There are a lot of similar ordinary people doing something similar. Then what John Major did was he encapsulated that response in what was quite, in political terms, quite a revolutionary action. This was 8 years before the doctrine of responsibility to protect. It was, I think, the first time that we had the international community had decided to intervene to protect a group of citizens within a country that didn't want them to, whose government didn't want them to come in. So, Sir John drove built a consensus in the international community that this needed to be done. And I think that was a really major achievement. And then, of course, we've heard about the military commitment that followed that on the ground and in the air. My next point is to say that the Kurdistan region has transformed itself since then. The Kurds are no longer an oppressed people the way they were under Saddam. They have a very high degree of autonomy within the state of Iraq. In UK terms, Scottish terms, it would be Devo max max. And they are masters of their own futures to a very substantial extent. And I think that is a real achievement. Now, to come to the UK's relations with the Kurdistan region, Sir John actually put it much better than I can right at the beginning, but let me run over some of the features. I lead a large Consulate-General here in Erbil. It has more diplomats in it than probably the majority of British embassies in countries around the world. We're correspondingly active. We had not one but two British ministers visit together in December last year to see the situation in the Kurdistan region and to recommit the UK to the region. So there was James Cleverly from the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office and James Heapy from the Ministry of Defence. Sir John talks about shared values and common interests, and that's absolutely right. We've got a major common interest in defeating Daesh, which is unfortunately not defeated. And so security cooperation is a large part of what we do here in the region. We have sought to give as much support as we can to the Kurdistan regional government in its dealings with the government in Baghdad. Congratulations to the Kurdish government on the successful budget deal that they struck only last week. We were lobbying for that in Baghdad on a pretty constant basis through our embassy there. We need to move on from there. Now that's sorted out to sort out issues of security cooperation between the region and the national government. We want to see to find political solutions to problems such as those in Sinjar to enable the Yazidis who fled from Sinjar to be able to go home, and we're focused on that. And we want to see more broadly in the longer term, a full implementation of the provisions of the Iraqi constitution as regards the KRI and the disputed territories. We have, since 2014, given approaching £300 million worth of humanitarian assistance in Iraq. And a substantial proportion of that has gone to the Kurdistan region because the Kurdistan region has been so generous in hosting displaced people as a result of the Daesh atrocities. And with it, but more specifically within the region, as I said, we have strong security cooperation. We're working within the Ministry of Peshmerga Affairs, supporting them to effect a reform and modernization of the Kurdish armed forces, the Peshmerga. We are now sending a steady stream of the Peshmerga's best cadets, officer cadets, to Sandhurst. And indeed, the first female cadet graduated from Sandhurst a couple of weeks ago. Another is due to graduate, and a male cadet graduates next week, and another female goes very shortly. We're doing the updating of the military curriculum in military and staff colleges in the region. We have support to the Kurdish judiciary. We send every year 8 or 10 of the brightest and the best of the younger generation to finish their studies in the UK in the hope that they will come back and become leaders of the future in the Kurdistan region. That's through our Achieving Scholarships scheme. And the consulate is very committed to promoting the empowerment of women across the region. We want to see economic reform, economic transformation within the region, and we want the region to benefit fully from the Iraq Reform, Recovery and Reconstruction Fund, World Bank Fund, to which we were the first donor. We also want the region to be a true beacon of human rights, as it already is in so many ways, including on religious freedom. But the relationship between the UK and the Kurdistan region isn't just government to government. A lot of civil society interest in the UK, in the region. There's the APPG, of course, in Parliament. There are British-based NGOs and charities that do work here. We have academic links. The British Museum and universities conduct archaeological excavations here. And of course, there's a large Kurdish diaspora in the UK, which shows a lot of interest in the Kurdistan region. And I'm keen that we should harness all of these to strengthen the bonds that exist between the United Kingdom and the Kurdistan region. In conclusion, it's a fantastic honor for me to serve here as the British Consul-General. I love working here. The Kurds are wonderful people. And we were friends of the Kurds in 1991. I think we've shown that. We remain friends of the Kurds, and we will continue to be friends of the Kurds and the Kurdistan region of Iraq for a very long time to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, James, for that. It's really important. I'm now going to pass on to our distinguished Kurdistan representative in the UK, Karwan, please.
Thank you, Rob. Mr. Chairman, Your Excellency Prime Minister Sir John Major, dear colleagues, today is a historic day for the United Kingdom's history and Kurdish nation's history. Therefore, it is worthwhile celebrating together and being proud of shared achievement. 30 years ago today, it was proven that humans are living in an integrated and connected world, no longer where the oppressed people left to their own limited resources and determination to resist and defy challenges to their very existence. That reality came to light with the endorsements of UN Security Council Resolution 688 that call on state to rescue a nation from further genocide. This resolution was endorsed and implemented through Sir John Major's bold initiative in Iraqi Kurdistan that advocated for safe haven, saved the whole nation from further genocide. That decision in realpolitik is called a game changer. It rightly constituted a subjective transformation in international policy towards their responsibility to protect. I'm pleased that British government's recent comprehensive review will create a conflict prevention center that would make the UK respond more effectively and use all its resources to meet its diplomatic goal. Some atrocities and conflict could have been prevented if this conflict prevention center has existed 30 years ago. In our case, Sir John Major was a one-man genocide prevention unit then. In addition to the international implication, the UN Security Council Resolution 688 also had regional and international implication. It shone light the Kurdish people's plight. Ever since then, we have been able to govern ourselves and to achieve immense progress in many areas. Today, we thank John Major and argue that as much as the decision was necessary then, it is even more important today in preserving the success story of the Kurdistan region and in ensuring that the Kurdistan region continue to be a force of stability and prosperity in the Middle East. I don't want to repeat what has been said, but I, as representative of a nation that has been rescued and saved 30 years ago from elimination, now I am proudly representing them within the legal and constitutional framework here in the United Kingdom, which I have been mandated to promote deeper bilateral relationship with the United Kingdom at all levels. It is with great pleasure and pride I will highlight some significant development in our bilateral relationship. Our representation is working steadfastly to expand tie between our two nations through government-to-government relation, scientific and education association, as well as cultural connection. We work with official and businesses and business bodies to further develop area of cooperation between the Kurdistan region and Britain. With respect to parliamentary affairs, our good friends, MPs and peers have demonstrated their interest in Kurdistan through the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Kurdistan region for the last 15 years. They have played instrumental role in promoting and securing a link that built on our our long-standing relationship. This successful rally is a testament of our long and deep friendship. As for the economy, we have for long sought robust bilateral economic relationship. Many British companies operate in Kurdistan region, and more to come to join the emerging market, where there is a wealth of opportunities and great demand for British expertise across multiple sectors, especially in agriculture and tourism. We also enjoy excellent educational tie and collaboration between the UK, between Kurdistan and British universities on a range of projects. Additionally, culture also plays a vital role in shaping our bilateral relationship with the UK. We thank the UK government and British Museum for supporting the Kurdish archaeologists to preserve our rich cultural heritage. We share values and interests, as it has been rightly reiterated recently by the Right Honourable James Cleverly, the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office State Minister, who emphasized our many shared interests and values aligned, including a strong belief in diversity, tolerance, and countering extremism. We highly value the British government's emphasis on a strong Kurdistan region. The Kurdistan region is grateful for this long-standing partnership with the UK. Many milestones has been achieved, and we hope that through continuation and amelioration of this relationship, we can better serve our mutual interest in promoting peace and stability in the wide region. Indeed, I would like to take this opportunity to expand my profound gratitude to the British public opinion then and now, which has become even more supportive. Thanks also to the British journalists, photographers and reporters that brought to light the plight of the Kurdish people worldwide. I also would like to acknowledge the role of the Kurdish diaspora in the UK, as everyone alluded to it, as a very active community within the British multicultural society, who have played their role in swaying public opinion. In the end, I would like to salute the victims that dedicated their life and fallen in the freezing mountain 30 years ago during Kurdish exodus. Thanks to all who have helped us and supported us to become what we are now. And my particular thanks to APPG, yourself, and all colleagues, and our good friend that have been a driven force in supporting Kurdistan and strengthening our bilateral relationship on many fronts. Thank you, and back to you, Rob.
Thank you, Karwan, and for all you do to promote Kurdistan in the United Kingdom. I think, I hope the Prime Minister doesn't mind me saying we're very lucky, your country's very lucky to have you here representing Kurdistan in the way that you do. We've heard from eyewitnesses how a good people was saved from Saddam Hussein in a few hectic weeks in March and April 1991. It brought out the best in all of us. And most importantly, it saved Kurdistan, without which the Middle East and the world would be bleaker and more dangerous today. If Sir John Major hadn't acted, thousands of Kurdistanis would have faced further genocide, and the Kurdistan region would not exist in its modern form. What would have been the fate of nearly 2 million people who fled from Syria and Mosul without the KRG? What would Iraq look like without the positive role that Kurdistan plays? The APPG has taken me and my colleagues there several times, and opinion formers and many others. We can see the achievements that the KRG have made in very difficult conditions and its flaws, the need for continuing reform and its potential. We have a full agenda for building a bigger and better bilateral relationship with the Kurdistan region for our mutual benefit. We want more British investors and institutions to invest in Kurdistan, and we ask that the government sends a trade mission there after COVID. We can do so much to help improve higher education, increase the mental health resilience of its people, expand its agriculture, not least the pomegranates from Halabja, and much more. I can promise you that we will return to Kurdistan as soon as it is possible. I also pledge that we'll do all we can as an APPG to foster friendship between our peoples. None of this would be possible without Sir John Major and Tony Blair, and we should be very proud of what the UK and the Kurds are doing together. And just to make the final concluding remarks, it gives me great pleasure to pass over to my colleague Alicia Kearns, who served in Iraq as an FCO official. Alicia.
Your Excellencies and all my colleagues and speakers today. I have the privilege of bringing our event to a close today, and it is an honour for you all to share your memories of those events 30 years ago. Because 30 years ago, under Sir John Major's leadership, the UK refused to sit by in silence, and we refused to let the Kurdish people be silenced. And whilst it is common for us to say never again and never forget, in this case, that really should be what we do. Because the actions of 30 years ago should serve as a memory that when we act according to our values, and when we refuse to sit by, and when the international community is united in its efforts and certain of its ends, we can save lives. And by recognising our responsibilities to the Kurdish people, we save tens, if not hundreds of thousands of lives. And that is a bright spot of humanitarian leadership in a decade that was too often filled with atrocities that went unprevented. It has been wonderful to hear such a variety of contributions. Rob, our chair, making clear that we plan to stand by the Kurdish people as parliamentarians and do more to further their cause. The KRG High Representative and our Consul-General talking about how we must support the Kurdish people to be masters of their own destinies, and that we have so many shared interests, from our security to the prosperity of Kurdistan and the region. The Foreign Minister spoke about the experiences of Kurds who lived here in exile. And I know from my own time in Kurdistan that it's not uncommon to hear a South London accent, which wasn't something I necessarily expected when visiting Kurdistan. And also that it was the British people, not just the government, that wanted to stand by the Kurds. My colleague Jason spoke of his pride of our servicemen in enforcing the no-fly zone and safe haven, whilst it was moving to hear Captain Sir Tom Hardie-Forsyth bring to life the reality of what servicemen confronted on the ground. I wish particularly to thank Gary Kent for bringing together today's fantastic event, and I apologise, I have an 11-week-old baby who's just chosen to wake up. But he has worked so hard with Ambassador Karwan to rightfully raise that together we can bring a brighter future for Kurdistan. And we heard from my colleague Nadhim Zahawi of his recollections of fighting for his people, and how the Kurdish people make up the front line protecting the world from Daesh. And I was personally privileged to have worked with the Global Coalition Against Daesh and the Kurdish people. And it was that time in Iraq and Erbil that introduced me to the beauty of the Kurdish people. Because Kurdistan provides an oasis of freedom and kindness to those most in need, safety to refugees of all creeds, and Prime Minister Barzani discussed the ways in which Kurdistan has opened its arms as a safe haven to others. But finally, Sir John rightfully spoke at the start about the beauty of Kurdistan, and of Kurdistan in springtime and the responsibilities we have to stand by our friends and allies. And he is right to do so. Because too often when we speak of our Kurdish friends and allies, it's to speak of atrocities, of memories that will never be, and of conflict and facing threats as brothers and sisters in arms. And we all know there is more to be done to stand by our Kurdish allies and protect them from those who still seek to silence them. But for all of us on this event today, I believe that Kurdistan and its people represent strength and beauty and a joy and pride in a culture and nation that we want more people to come to know, experience and love. I was but 3 years old when the events we discussed today took place. And I say this because it's vital that we educate our younger generations about the atrocities our friends have faced and how when we come together, we can make a difference if we remain true to our values and marshal the international community. So I thank you, Sir John Major, for all you did to enable the British people to hold our heads high, and for every family you saved and every memory that has been created thanks in Kurdistan, thanks to all you did. It's a well-known phrase that sadly too often has been true, that the Kurds have no friends but the mountains. But I think today we say to the Kurdish people, and this demonstrates in a small way, that 30 years on, in the UK, you will always have a friend who is grateful for your friendship and who will stand with you. And we all say, may the Kurdish sun never set, and we thank you for your friendship because it truly is a blessing.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Alicia. I think you spoke for all of us. And with that, we bring proceedings to a close. Thank you to our distinguished guests, particularly Sir John Major and Prime Minister. It's been an honour to have both of you at our seminar, and we wish you all well.
Thank you, Chairman. If I may just say a couple more words as we are concluding this webinar. Once again, I thank you for all your contributions in the past and for your continuous relationship in the future. I just wanted to mention a couple more points. I was told by our Minister of Health that we are in talks with the AstraZeneca to get some of the vaccines. So I wanted to mention this to Minister Zahawi. And since we are doing this through a video conference, I just remembered something that back then, many of you told your stories. And as I said, it was a personal experience for me, and literally just 6-7 kilometers from where I stand today, when all the civilians were fleeing and the Iraqi army was chasing the civilians. There was a Kore Valley just not far from here, like I said, 6-7 kilometers from here. They were stopped by some Peshmergas who resisted and fought back. The next day, there was another journalist that I would like to remember today and mention him because he played a key role, and he was Jim Miller. He was with us, and unfortunately, because he didn't have, we didn't have any ways of communicating. He had to use some military radio to communicate back with London. And he was the one that actually brought the news to us that Sir John Major, the back Prime Minister, had this proposal of creating a safe haven, whether the Kurds would accept that or not. And I remember very well that my father was actually very happy to hear the idea and immediately said, yes, we are all for it. So I just wanted to mention that. And Sir John, I wanted to mention about the street that is named after you, but since you mentioned it, I didn't know that you had heard about it. But since you mentioned it, I just wanted to say this, that you live in our hearts. You live in the hearts of the Kurdish people who know you, who lived through those times. But this street is just a gesture of appreciation, especially for the newer generation, to know who you are. Once again, thank you, Sir John, and thank you, all of you, for all you've done. And we are looking forward to working even closer with all of you in the future to create a better Kurdistan and a more stable region. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody, and thank you again for today's webinar. It was a very special occasion.